Wi-Fi solar technology providers. So the experience of broadband replication that we have accumulated is gone. It can be replicated with the rest of the world. For what Huawei has done, the international media, international press has commented that we chose Huawei as the new Wi-Fi provider. It's not only because of their cost effectiveness, but also because of the advancedness of their technologies.
We are employing new and latest technologies to upgrade our stations so that we can provide better service and reduce our power consumption to 1/10 of the previous level, and which also prepared for sustainable development. We have made markets in 120 nations, which is based on win-win cooperation. And we also implemented localization strategies, provided job opportunities for the host countries. We have altogether 14,000 employees, and more than 65% are locals. And based on those cooperation, we created more than 10,000 jobs indirectly. Meanwhile, we also support local capacity building in Africa. We have established 6 centers for trainings, and every year we trained 12,000 ICT professionals who will provide sustainable development for the industry in Africa. The development of Huawei has received a lot of support from governments around the world. And so here, on behalf of Huawei Technologies, I'd like to give to those governments and the dear guests present today. Huawei as a company in developing countries, our contribution to global trade, and we are recognized as a great promoter of world trade. We are willing to further this kind of trade. To conclude, we appreciate WTO give such a chance and create such a platform and dialogue for enterprises, and also invite all of you to visit Huawei in Shenzhen, Guangdong province, and give us some suggestion and guidance. We look for further cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yang.
Again, we can see that moving into untapped markets with the African example and the green approach is a theme that is coming up again. Could I please turn to you, Greg? The floor is yours. Yeah, if you wish, as you like.
Well, first, let me just say what an honor it is to be invited to participate in the World Export Development Forum, and just to be up here on stage with such a distinguished group of fellow panelists. It truly is an honor for me. I will say right from the beginning that I'm not here as an expert in international trade or international finance or an economist. I'm here as a diplomat, and my job is involved in the day-to-day management of the U.S.-China relationship. As such, I'm going to limit my remarks here mainly to the United States and China. However, I believe what happens in our two countries is going to have huge consequences for the topic at hand, which is the long-term potential for export-led growth in developing and least developed countries. The U.S.-China relationship is the relationship between the world's two largest economies, between the world's largest exporter of goods, which is a title that China took from Germany last year, and the world's largest importer, my country, the United States. I would like to use this presentation to highlight what I see are 3 key trends in the U.S. and China that are going to impact the ability of developing and least developed countries to expand their exports. Trend number 1 I want to highlight for you is the recovery of the U.S. economy. The U.S. remains the largest and most open market in the world, so the confidence of U.S. consumers, that U.S. consumers regain the confidence that they once had, is going to be a key factor for countries seeking to grow through exports. The U.S. recovery is underway, though it might take longer than we would like, and there are challenges ahead. In my country, there is a stubbornly high unemployment rate. However, the underlying strengths of the U.S. economy, especially innovation, worker productivity, and entrepreneurship, remain, and in the coming months and years, our recovery will strengthen, which will help the world economy grow too. Let me also say that the Obama administration has launched an ambitious plan to expand our own exports. The National Export Initiative, which President Obama announced in March, is a plan to double U.S. exports by 2015. This is an extremely ambitious plan. And in the process, this plan would create 2 million new jobs, export-related jobs, which in the United States tend to be the highest-paying jobs. So for developed and developing countries alike, exports are an important driver of job growth. Expanding our exports to China will be crucial if we are to reach the goals of the National Export Initiative. Last year, our bilateral trade reached almost $400 billion US. While we still encounter some problems with access for U.S. goods and services here in China, China is now the third largest and fastest growing market for U.S. exports. We exported almost $70 billion in goods to China last year. I should note, however, that some of China's recent growth as a market is cyclical, and it reflects China's very strong economy relative to our other major trading partners. Nevertheless, the prospects for the future growth of the China market, not just for the exports of the United States, but the exports of the whole world, looks very positive. And this is the second trend I'd like to highlight for you, which is the rise of the Chinese consumer, closely related to the rise in Chinese wages. Workers in China want to enjoy a greater share of the wealth China's exporters are generating. In the last few months, we have seen unprecedented labor actions in Guangdong province. Workers at several plants in Guangdong succeeded in winning very large pay increases as a result of these labor actions. While such labor actions remain isolated, overall China's wage costs are rising, and they're rising rather quickly. This year, provincial governments have raised minimum wage levels in China in almost all areas. Many of my Chinese friends, including some in government, have commented that increasing wages are a good thing for China's long-run economic development. Higher wages will help alleviate the gaps between rich and poor that we see in China, will encourage China's exporters to move up the value chain, and as Mr. Long has already highlighted, move China along towards an economy that's more based on domestic consumption rather than exports. But wage increases alone are not going to be enough to boost consumption in China. Building a better social safety net, especially in healthcare and pensions, is going to be key to get Chinese households to spend more and reduce precautionary savings, which is one reason why Chinese savings rate is so very high. As consumption in China grows, reinforced by continued appreciation of the renminbi, or the Chinese yuan, China's growth as a market for other countries' exports is going to accelerate. In years to come, you are likely to see China moving up the value chain in both manufacturing and services, and turning to lower wage countries to manufacture things like toys, shoes, and apparel items that China used to make. And this leads me to my third trend that I want to highlight for you, which is the shifting of some export jobs out of China as costs here rise. Some jobs on China's east coast are already shifting inland, and we're seeing this. In Chengdu, a city not far from here, this is where I live and work right now, we are seeing an increase in jobs that are moving from the coastal provinces, that are moving from places like Guangdong to Sichuan province, where wages are significantly lower. However, you're also seeing some jobs, and I emphasize some jobs at this point, moving overseas. For a time in the 1990s, China was so competitive in labor-intensive exports that it was really difficult for smaller, low-wage countries to really compete with this juggernaut. But now the situation is starting to change. Now that costs in China are rising, other countries are seeing increased investment in export industries. Vietnam, for one, where wages are roughly half of what they are in China, is already seeing this increased investment in export industries. Secretary Hussein's country of Bangladesh also is seeing additional orders. I recently read that the giant Hong Kong apparel supplier Li & Fung, which supplies many retailers in the United States, Walmart among them, increased its production in Bangladesh by 20% last year, even as it cut production in China last year by 5%.